Hey everyone, Justin from Deep Dive Stocks here with another data dive. Today we're going to be looking at NIO. Now, I don't know much about NIO, but everyone's talking about it, so I figured it would be a good time to just look at the data, see where the stock has been, and maybe try to get a glance at where the stock is headed. So, without further ado, let's get started. So this is NIO produced today at market closed. This is a Deep Dive stock report. And like usual, we're going to go ahead and start with VoEx. If you're not too familiar with VoEx, that's okay. I have a video up on my channel about it. But mainly, there's two components of VoEx that are most important, and that is the magenta line, which is the VoEx daily, and then the tan line, which is VoEx-trend. The ideal is when VoEx resides nicely within these two horizontal lines. We denote that as like the zone of stability. However, when VoEx moves outside of those lines, so if it goes above it or when it goes below it, that indicates that the stock is unstable, and this instability can be provoked by several things, and it has statistically relevant price action that follows. For instance, when VoEx goes above the top horizontal line or the inhibition zone, we typically see that the price action that provoked that VoEx behavior gets worked against. So every time VoEx goes above the inhibition line, the price will usually fall back down. We see that in June of 2021, and we see that again in November of 2021. Conversely, when VoEx goes inside of the propagation zone or below the bottom horizontal line, whichever price action provoked that VoEx behavior is typically the price action that will be propagated along. For instance, we see that most recently here with NIO, when VoEx-trend dropped below the propagation line in December of 2021. Since then, VoEx has lost 60% of its value. So that's pretty characteristic of a stock's price when VoEx drops below the propagation zone. And so the main question is, well, how is VoEx behaving now? And we see that VoEx is unfortunately going deeper into the propagation zone. So this is indicative of continued and persistent declines in price. But let's see if there's anything else in the reports that can maybe help guide us in the short term or medium terms. So first we go to the snap graphs. These snap graphs take VoEx's behavior and then maps it to the historical way that the price behaved in the past over a given interval. So for instance, we have the 1 day, the 1 week, the 2 week, and then the 1 month time frames. We see that on the short term, we have positive predictions, so the crosshair is in the positive quadrant here. So we have positive predictions on the 1 day, positive predictions on the 1 week or the 5 trading days, positive predictions on the 10 day or the 2 weeks, 10 trading days. But on the longer term, on the 1 month time frame, we seem to have negative returns that are still indicated. And the snap graphs are useful because it kind of sums up all of VoEx and gives us a nice clean prediction or the way that the price typically behaves with previous similar VoEx behavior. So on the short term, we seem to have positive, based off VoEx, we seem to have a little bit of positive price action, but persistent negative action on the more long-term time horizon. When we look at the expected price range, these dotted lines represent the 68 probability for like the price movement, and this is derived from implied volatility. So right below we have the implied volatility line. We see that recently the dips that NIO has been experiencing are more than the market has anticipated, even with a rising volatility. And it seems like that is a persistent trend here with NIO. So when NIO's price falls, it seems that it typically falls more than even the market is expecting. And with a baseline volatility of around 70%, which has recently risen to about 90% and is currently exceedingly high at about 120%, moving outside these boundaries is pretty impressive. In terms of shorting, there's not much to report here. Shorting has been pretty dead on the stock for a while. It seems like in July, August, September, the shorting started to fall, and it really hasn't moved much since. The options layout tell an interesting tale. So we have a lot of out of the money calls, almost no in the money calls. But opposite for the puts, we have almost all in the money puts and almost no out of the money puts. That's kind of backwards. Typically on a stock, you'll see a lot of in the money calls, few out of the money calls, but very few in the money puts, but a lot of out of the money puts. So NIO is a little backwards for that. We see that today, if we go to the right graph, which shows us the change in the options today, the bars represent the change in the options from yesterday, the open interest, and the lines represent the average change in options per day over the past month. So we see that a lot of calls and a lot of puts have been opened up in the past month. So what's interesting to know is, or to see if we can figure out, is were those calls and puts dealer long? Are they dealer short? Did retail purchase those calls? Did retail sell those calls? And that'll help us gauge the market's expectation of price movement, even though we know VoEx is saying that a persistent decline in price is most likely. So let's have a look. For that, in order to do that, we can look at the delta. And we see that, oddly, delta over the past month, so the average delta for the past month is negative 137,614. And interestingly, current delta is negative 137,164. So delta hasn't moved too much, but unfortunately, NIO is currently in a gamma squeeze. And one of the common misconceptions about gamma squeezes is which way the price typically gets pushed when a stock enters a gamma squeeze. I think most people think that a stock goes up, but in reality, stocks typically fall in price on average around 5% when they enter a gamma squeeze before recovery starts. However, since NIO has been in a gamma squeeze for at least a month, because we see that the average delta for the past month is negative, I imagine that NIO has dropped quite significantly more than 5%, like most gamma squeezes. What's interesting is when we look at the change in price, so today NIO rose by 5.89%, but then if we go to the expected price range, again derived from volatility, we see that it's really not that much greater than the market's expectations. So although a 5.89% movement in a stock is pretty healthy, for NIO, it's really not that significant. It's only about 0.74, if I can do my math right, 0.74% more than the market was expecting, or with the boundary that the market would expect NIO to stay within. And we see that tomorrow, the expected movement is plus or minus 6.46%, giving it a range of an upper range of $15.89 and a lower range of $13.97. We can see the effects of the gamma squeeze in the hedging matrix. So we see that as the price increases and volatility increases, so for every point that the price goes up and for every point that volatility rises, 136,766 shares must be purchased into that increase in price. But if volatility decreases or price decreases and volatility increases, 143,562 shares have to be sold. So we can see that this gamma squeeze can add up pretty significantly. So in sum, it looks like NIO may have a few near-term positive days, but VoEx is still deep into the propagation zone and getting deeper. The snap graphs on the long term, the 3 months, have negative predictions, or like the current VoEx behavior is indicative of negative returns. Liquidity is diminishing pretty drastically from the stock, and the stock is still in a gamma squeeze. So, in sum, it looks like the data is suggesting that NIO will probably continue to decline in price relatively significantly, at least for now. So, that's Deep Dive Stock Report on NIO. I hope it was helpful. If you have any questions, definitely check out the website, or if you have any questions on gamma squeezes, I have a video on that. If you have any questions on VoEx, I have a video on that. You can always email me at justin@deepdivestocks.com if you have any questions. And be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I'm pretty new to these videos, so I'm just trying to get the hang of them, so any feedback is wonderful, actually. And yeah. Oh, and real quick, if you want I have a newsletter for stocks that go into a gamma squeeze. Gets delivered right to your email every day. It's free to sign up. Consider it, give it a go. They can be pretty handy. It can be pretty handy to know if your stock is in a gamma squeeze, especially since most stocks in a gamma squeeze go down in price, at least by 5% on average. So that's all I got for you guys today. I hope everything's good. Happy trading, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.